Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A very warm good evening to everyone. I trust you've all had a wonderful day here in the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and you've experienced many interesting things. You've learned many nice things as well. And today's final program, it's the last program, right? Is going to be a talk on the topic, the journey of the soul. And it's one really exciting journey that we've been through. And we have to decide our future journey. This is a journey quite unlike any other that we've experienced in our memory, recent memory. Because it takes us through such a wide variety of experiences and situations and locations that it's unimaginable for us to even think of it right now. Imagine you're traveling the world. Where would you go? What kind of extremes would you travel to? Maybe the North Pole, the Sahara Desert, maybe go to Hawaii, see the temperate climates, the tropical climates, go to the different countries of the world, go under the sea, look at the life under the sea, maybe go in the mountains and see how everybody lives there. But here we're talking of a journey that's gone far beyond that. We're talking of the journey of the soul. You know, one of the issues with human beings is that we are obsessed with the present. We think the present is the all in all. We think of the present as something that's all that exists. And that's the most important thing for us. But the present isn't all in all. It's not everything. As an extension of this idea of the present being everything, we also think of the present life being the all in all. Even though many people have some intuitive understanding of something called a previous life and a next life, but it's a very vague, unsubstantiated notion. It's not very clear. So this idea that the present is everything, and by extension the present life is the only life you've had, is something that's a conception that's prevalent very widely. What to speak of having some misconceptions about the present life? People generally do not understand the word even life, what to speak of present life. So I'll ask you a question. How do you define life? What is life? I mean, don't give me an answer like life is happiness and some distress, some happiness, or life is music or something like that. But I'm asking a question that's very philosophical, very pointed. What is life according to you? What constitutes life? Any guesses?
School.
Sorry?
And school. where we learn?
School. Life is school.
Where we learn how to be better and make mistakes sometimes.
Alright. My question is, however, what is life? L-I-F-E. What is life? Because it's going to be very important for us to know the answer to this question before we know what kind of journey we've been on for a long, long time.
It's a spark of the divine.
Sorry?
It's a spark of the divine.
A spark of the divine. Excellent. You're one step ahead of me. Excellent. Any further ideas? What is life?
Consciousness.
Consciousness. Okay, you're 2 steps ahead of me. Generally, even law. Any lawyers here? No. Law in different countries, it's interesting the way they define death. They say one of the definitions of death is the absence of life or the end of life. But they don't define what life is. So when you say death is the end of something, but you don't define that something, then you haven't defined death. So you talk of death in terms of some symptoms like irreversible changes in the lungs, respiratory system, or in the brain, or something like that. But we haven't really pinned it down. And the definition to death is not about death is not clear because the definition of life is not clear. And how do they define life? Believe it or not, one of the legal dictionaries I checked in, I googled before I came here just a few minutes ago, they say that life is the condition of being alive. How does that sound? A tautology. What is a tautology?
And the meaning is, and the word is in the meaning in the same time.
Yes, the very word exists in its definition. Doesn't make sense. What is the meaning of stealing? It means to steal. It doesn't really, it's not very illuminating. So when you say that life is a condition of being alive, it's not being very helpful. Or when you say life is being animate, it means the same thing. Or one step further, they may describe life as according to its symptoms. They talk of how life is the condition in which one performs one's ordinary or natural functions. That's a symptom. The ability to move, to speak, to think, to digest food or whatever. These are symptoms of life. So very often we confuse a thing with its symptoms. The symptoms are not the thing. Symptoms are a result of the thing. So in this way there's confusion about what life really is. Today generally, if you talk to scientists, they would describe life in terms of some chemicals, or ultimately in terms of atoms and molecules. And that's what life boils down to according to modern thinking. But that's not very satisfactory, is it? You know, intuitively also we have an understanding that life is something more than just a combination of chemicals and atoms and molecules. When somebody dies, we say he has passed away. Who has passed away? The person is still there, still lying here. So who or what has passed away? That's the question. Life has passed away. Life has ebbed away. But what is that life that has left and gone? This is a very fundamental point that's missing in modern knowledge, in modern understanding. And unfortunately, no faculty or department in any university teaches this knowledge. And even if you go to a department of philosophy or religion, they will teach it in an academic way to say, well, this philosophy believes that there is something called such and such. There is soul or something like that. but they don't actually teach it from the point of view of conviction and understanding, the same way as they would teach that there is an atom or a molecule with conviction. Because whoever teaches that there are electrons and protons and there are chemicals, they are convinced about it and they speak like that. But the understanding of life and the soul and so on are not commonly found. In Bhagavad Gita, the great book of ancient wisdom, there is a very clear understanding of what life is. Life is the soul. Now the word soul is again something very hazy, because everybody talks about soul. You know, we talk about music being my soul, but that's just a kind of a metaphorical or vague way of saying things. But specifically, what exactly is the soul? So the soul is a particle of spiritual energy. It's not material. You could say it's anti-material. It's a particle of spiritual energy that resides within the body, in the region of the heart. It is imperishable, indestructible, eternal. It is conscious, it is full of bliss and full of knowledge. Presently, however, the soul lies asleep, so to speak. It lies dormant. It lies unaware of its own divine condition and situation. So the soul presently is here, is covered over, and is driving this body. So the soul is like a driver, and the body is like a car which is being driven by the soul or the driver. Even if the car is in good condition, if the driver doesn't sit in the car won't move. So similarly, even if a body is in good condition, if the soul doesn't exist inside the body cannot function. So the point of time when the soul permanently leaves the body is called death. Very simple. So Bhagavad Gita makes things so simple. It's just a particle of spiritual energy. And that particle of spiritual energy is the real you and the real me. So I am the soul. You are the soul. We are all souls. And we are in this human body at this time. I think you've heard this quote many times before. I think it was Mark Twain or somebody. You know that quote?
We're not spiritual.
Yes. Can you say that?
We're not spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Change a little bit. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Which means as souls, we are presently experiencing human life. What does that imply? It implies that there was a time when we did not experience human life. In other words, it means that we, the souls, were in different bodies before this human body. And the body we were in before this particular body may have been a human body or may not. And then there was a body before that, and before that, and before that, and before that, going back to time immemorial. And unless we do something about it, which is authorized and correct, we will continue on this journey. So the journey of the soul is the journey of the soul from one body to another, to another, to another, an practically interminable chain of bodies, one after the other, one after the other. And only a few of these bodies being human bodies. Just imagine the sheer scale, the enormity, the magnitude of this. We are talking of a time scale of millions and trillions and trillions and trillions of years. We are talking of numbers of bodies that are trillions and trillions. We are talking of every single species of life. We've been there, done that. We've been in every species of life. This is real evolution, not the Darwinian concept of evolution. You've all heard of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, when he speaks of evolution, he speaks about the body having evolved from that of an ape-like creature, to that of humans. But the scriptures don't accept that argument, because all the bodies are simultaneously existing. So what we are speaking of is the movement of the soul through different bodies which simultaneously exist. In other words, we were sometimes in in bodies of bacteria, sometimes germs, sometimes cockroaches, rats, mice, cats, dogs, monkeys, tigers, lions, birds, plants, trees, shrubs, living entities in the higher planets of this universe. We've been through all of these. Can we show a few pictures just to illustrate that? Not the previous ones. Yeah. This goes to show how the soul transmigrates or moves from body to body, going through all the different species of life. Vedic scriptures speak about so many different kinds of species. 8.4 million types of species. And in each species there are innumerable living entities. So the soul moves in through one body, from childhood to youth to old age, and then there's death, and then again it repeats, and we go through these different species of life. All over, we've been through it, and that's been our story in this material world. Can we have another picture? Okay, the same story that's being repeated, where we've been through all of these experiences, but we've forgotten that. Can we come back to the first one that you had? And this shows the movement through our particular body. The soul is journeying even presently. Because when we were born, we had a body something like this. Yes? And now we're probably something like maybe this or whatever. But it's changing. Do you know that since you stepped into this room, your body has changed? Yes, some cells have died. Some cells have been born. And especially depending on how old you are, there's changes going on in the body. So there's a change. So it's said that every 7 years, all the cells in your body have completely changed. So to speak, you have a new body. The body has completely been transformed. And so even in this life, the soul is undergoing a journey, changing bodies from birth to childhood, to youth, to middle age, to old age, and finally death. And then onwards to another life in some other species, or perhaps the same species, and the story repeats: birth, childhood, youth, middle age, old age, death. And it goes on and on and on. This is this phenomenal journey of the soul, going on for these trillions of years. How does it sound? Mind-boggling? Yes? That's what we've been doing. All these years, millions and millions of years, that's all we've been doing. What have we achieved? Not really much. Whatever we achieved, we had to leave behind and go on to the next body. And this has been going on from time immemorial. And how do we select the next body? Srila Prabhupada, our founder, who translated many of the Vedic texts like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam into English, he gave a very simple explanation. And I'll adapt that explanation for all of you living in England here. Let's say you've just starting out on life and you don't have much money. So you get a studio apartment on rent because that's the cheapest. And then you start working and you earn some money. And you have enough money to put a down payment, and then you get a loan or a mortgage, and then you get another house, which is bigger than this one. And then as you go on, you start your own business and you make a lot of money. I'm not making any promises, I'm just giving an example. And then you make a lot of money. And then you decide, no, I want to shift to another locality, another region which is much better. You go there. And you decide, yeah, actually this house is small, I want a bigger house. And then you earn more money. And then you get a nice palatial house. It's all yours. And it's all paid up because you made a killing on the stock market or whatever it is. And you made so much money. So you got your house. And then one day, what happens? The stock market collapses and you lose everything. You mortgage your house is gone, and you're back where you started in the studio apartment. And then you're still looking for some work because this business is gone. Now you start again, struggling. You may have the same luck or you may not. And then you struggle again and the story begins. So in the same way, the house that you are in is like the body. So you are like the soul in this example, and the house is like the body. So just as you move from house to house, depending on what? What does it depend on? Which kind of house you move from one to the other?
Action.
Beg your pardon?
Action, your karma.
Yeah, when you leave one house to get another house, you got a studio apartment, and then you go to a one-bedroom apartment.
Money.
What's the money? That's it. That's it. It's money. If you have money, you get a bigger house. And when you go from the one-bedroom house to a two-bedroom house, then what do you need? Money. You go to a better locality and get a bigger house. What do you need more? More money. So money is the criterion. Money is honey, right? No, it ain't. But you need money to get a house. So similarly, just as money is the eligibility criterion for you to get a certain kind of house, similarly the actions you perform in the human form of life, technically called karma, is your eligibility to get your next body. Depending on how much money you have, you can get another house. Depending on the kind of actions you perform, you will get the next body awarded to you by the laws of nature. This is the way how things happen. And we move on and we purchase, so to speak, the next body by our karma. And the karma is in our hands. What kind of actions do we want to perform? And according to that, we will be obliged to go to a lower category of a house, from a palatial cottage to maybe a studio apartment, or maybe from a studio apartment to a big palace. It all depends on the money, which means the karma. So that's what is important. And what's further important is that the karma has to be performed in the human form of life. And then once you're in the human form of life, your karma acts back and forth, back and forth. You perform actions and there will be reactions. Those reactions will come in course of time. But then what happens? There is death. When death comes, it interrupts the chain of karma, of action and reaction. So then you take birth again according to your karma, And the leftover karmic reactions will come to you now. So even if somebody is a human being and gets born as a dog, for example, because of having performed some dog-like karma, then that dog may be entitled or may receive some very lavish hospitality in the house of his owner. So therefore we see many people who are rich or even not so rich, they keep pets and they dote on them. They let them sleep on their own beds, on very soft cushioned beds. They take them to beauty parlors. They give them the best of dog food. They look after them nicely. In fact, the condition of some dogs, just from this point of view, is much better than many human beings in many parts of the world who don't have food to eat. So on one hand, you have a dog, but on the other hand, his physical condition, his comfort level is far more than that of many human beings. So that's how karma acts. Very complicated. Depending on your complex mix of good and bad karma, you get a certain body and you get a certain situation in life of happiness and distress, comfort and discomfort in that life. In this way, we move on, and this is carried forward, life to life to life to life to life. So we carry forward some karma, and we extinguish that by enjoying or suffering the reactions. But in the meanwhile, we're generating more karma, and that generates more reactions, and we have to take birth again, and again, and again, and so the cycle goes on. When you write sentences, you write a composition or a paragraph, you punctuate, you use punctuations, you use a full stop, you use commas. So also in this journey, in this narration, death is like a major punctuation point. It's like a full stop. Sleep at night is like a comma. The same sentence continues. Because you wake up in the morning, you remember where I was. Oh, what am I supposed to do? Who am I? But when you're asleep, you don't remember who you were, what your work is, nothing. But you wake up. So it's only a comma. But death is a full stop. So you don't remember who you were in your previous life. So death makes us forget where we were and what we were. And we wake up to a completely new condition of life. And because we don't remember what we were in the previous life, we think it doesn't exist. But logically, that doesn't stand to reason. Because we understand that we are all born in diverse conditions of life. Can you give some logical arguments for why we should think that there is something like a previous life? How many of you believe that there is something called a previous life? Okay, quite a few of you. How many have no confirmed opinion about it? Or you're in the can't say category? How many? Okay, one. How many are in the confirmed category? Yes, it does exist. How many? One, two, okay. So, can you give some reasons logically? We're talking of simple logic. Can you give us some logic of why we should understand that there is something called a previous life? And therefore that there will be a future life? Anyone? Yes.
For me, the notion that this life has a purpose
Mm-hmm.
and that it relates to the previous life, and that I have to create this purpose, be this purpose, do this purpose, and the next life will be a continuation.
Okay, so your point is that this life has a purpose and it's a continuation of something from the previous life. That's a good point. Something more? Yeah.
For me, sometimes I felt that it's like I'm being destined to do certain things. I don't, at that particular moment, perhaps understand with my brain why, but I just sometimes feels that a deeper purpose is coming from before. I don't know if I can explain it clearly, like, because like, just give one example. When somebody asked me, why did you go to yourself and when on a yoga journey? And at that time I was only 14, I didn't know, I just felt. There was no even literature for me at that time where I was living, or classes. I just felt I just need to follow it. I couldn't explain it why. And then I spoke to somebody years after. I said maybe it's something also coming from the previous.
So your answer, if I understand right, is there is an intuitive sense that we all have that we are coming from somewhere. That it didn't just start out of nothing. It's not just the beginning out of nowhere. So there is a history to our birth, to our existence in this life. There is a background to it. We have some intuitive sense. So what both of you have said is more or less like that. That intuitively we can understand there is a purpose, there is some connection. That's very nice. Something else? Yes.
The feeling of deja vu.
A feeling of deja vu. Excellent. Can you say what that is? What's deja vu?
Feeling like you've been somewhere or you're doing something and you think, I've been here before, I've done this before.
Many of us may have at least once, if not more often, been through an experience when we go to a place we haven't been to in this life, and we suddenly feel an overwhelming sense of, or the idea that I have been here before. I was here before. You can't logically explain that. So that's a point that explains that yes, you indeed were, but not in this life, maybe in the previous life. I remember Srila Prabhupada once made a comment. In one of his commentaries, he mentioned, even in dreams, we can get an indication of a previous life. For example, he says, suppose you dream that you're flying. Now, in this life, you were never flying. As a human being, you don't fly. Well, maybe nowadays you do, what's it called? Paradiving or something like that, yes? But let's say you were never a paradiver. You didn't parachute or something, and so where does that come from? So he says it's because it's coming from a previous life. Maybe in one of your earlier lives you were a bird. So that experience of flying is there. It's stored in the mind. The mind is a storehouse of our memories for all the lives that we've been through, millions and zillions of lives. But it's all mixed up. You can imagine how many memories there must be, unlimited. But just like sometimes there's fermentation in the water and it rises up as bubbles, pop, 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 it bursts and then goes up. So sometimes randomly some of these things come up to the top, they burst up and you dream I'm flying. No connection. But it's something coming up.